The richest person in your neighborhood probably isn't the one driving the newest SUV. He's the man in the 15-year-old Camry, wearing a windbreaker from a store that closed a decade ago. Nobody looks twice when he pulls into the grocery store parking lot. Nobody would guess that his brokerage account has more zeros in it than most of the doctors and lawyers on his street. You've walked past a real millionaire before. You just didn't know it. His name doesn't matter. What matters is the house. 3 bedrooms, built in 1987. The paint is a little faded on the north side, the kind of thing you'd notice if you were trying to sell it, which he isn't because he's lived there for 26 years and has no plans to leave. His net worth is just over $2 million. Nothing about his life would tell you that, and that's not an accident. That's the entire point. For most of the 20th century, wealth had a look. A house said something. A car said something. A watch said something. Status was a language, and people spent enormous amounts of money just to speak it fluently. But somewhere along the way, a different kind of wealthy person emerged, one who understood a strange truth. The moment you start spending to prove you have money, you start losing the thing that made you wealthy in the first place. Every dollar spent on looking rich is a dollar that stops working for you. It stops compounding. It stops multiplying while you sleep. It becomes a jacket, a lease payment, a granite countertop, something that depreciates the second you drive it off the lot or hang it in the closet. The man in the Camry understood this decades ago, long before anyone called it a philosophy. He wasn't chasing admiration. He was chasing something quieter, something that doesn't show up in a driveway. He was chasing the freedom to never think about money again. That freedom didn't arrive all at once. It came from a string of decisions so small that none of them, on their
own, looked like anything. Every paycheck, a fixed percentage, moved automatically into an index fund before he ever saw it. Not because he was disciplined in some heroic way, but because he removed the decision entirely. He never had to resist temptation because the money was already gone before temptation showed up. Psychologists have a name for the trap he avoided: lifestyle inflation, the quiet, almost invisible habit of spending more the moment you earn more. A raise arrives, and within weeks it's absorbed by a nicer apartment, a newer phone, a few more dinners out. The income goes up. The gap between income and spending stays exactly the same, or shrinks. Most people never notice it happening. It just feels like their life is finally catching up to what they deserve. He let his life stay the same while his income grew. That gap, unglamorous, unphotographable, is where the $2 million came from. He also stopped watching the market the way most people do. Every dip didn't send him to his phone. Every rally didn't tempt him to chase the next hot stock. He understood, somewhere deep in his decision-making, that the investors who beat the market are rarely the ones trying hardest to beat it. Vanguard's own research on investor behavior has shown again and again that the accounts with the best returns often belong to people who forgot they had an account at all. He bought a used car, not because he couldn't afford a new one, but because he'd done the math once, years ago, and never needed to do it again. A new car loses a significant chunk of its value the moment it leaves the dealership. He simply lets someone else absorb that loss and let his own money sit somewhere that grows instead of somewhere that shrinks. None of this felt like sacrifice to him. That's the part people misunderstand. Deprivation is what happens when you want something and deny yourself. He didn't want the new car. He didn't want the bigger house. Somewhere in his 40s, his desires quietly recalibrated to match his strategy, until the strategy simply became who he was. Psychologists call this identity-based habit formation, the moment a behavior stops being something you do and becomes something you are. He didn't budget. He didn't grit his teeth past a Black Friday sale. He just wasn't the kind of person those things were built to tempt. And this is where the story stops being about money at all. Because the real prize was never the $2 million sitting in his account. The real prize is what that number lets him do. It lets him walk away from a job that treats him badly because he doesn't need the next paycheck to survive. It lets him say no to a request he doesn't want to say yes to without a single second of financial fear. It lets him help his daughter with a down payment without blinking, without a spreadsheet, without a conversation about whether they can afford it. It lets him sleep. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from lying awake doing math. Rent against income, bills against the calendar, one bad month against everything else. Behavioral economists describe this as loss aversion working against you twice. First, the fear of losing what little cushion you have. Then, the fear of the next emergency that might take it. Most people never escape that loop because every dollar that comes in is already spoken for before it arrives. He escaped it decades ago, and he escaped it in the most unremarkable way possible. Economists have a term for what he bought instead of a new car and a bigger house. They call it optionality, the ability to choose rather than the ability to react. Most people spend their entire financial lives reacting. He spent his building the freedom to never have to. That's the part no one photographs. You can't put peace of mind in a driveway. You can't lease not worrying about bills. The people around him see a modest house and a fading Camry and assume, reasonably,
that they're looking at an ordinary life. They're looking at the opposite of ordinary. They're looking at a man who traded almost every visible symbol of success for the one thing status can never actually buy, the absence of financial fear. There's a version of this story happening quietly in ordinary houses on ordinary streets in every city in the country right now. Teachers, mechanics, mid-level office workers, people who will never trend online, never post a picture of a receipt, never say a word about their account balance at a dinner party. Federal Reserve data on household wealth consistently shows that a meaningful share of American millionaires don't look the part at all, and never intended to. They didn't get rich by being extraordinary. They got rich by being consistent, in a world designed to make consistency feel boring. Maybe that's the real twist in this story. Not that quiet wealth exists, not that appearances lie, but that somewhere out there, a man is pulling into his driveway in a car worth less than his monthly grocery bill, and he isn't thinking about money at all. He forgot what it feels like to worry about it. And that, quietly, without a single luxury logo attached to it, might be the richest a person can ever be.